Heavy defeat for SPD and CDU in Lower Saxony and also in North Rhine-Westphalia. And they go to Maischberger and tell us a bunch of nonsense. We'll clear that up here this morning. That's why there's a short clip now from Bärbel Bass, and then we'll break it down completely. If you want to support this channel, I would really appreciate a like and a subscription, and I promise there's only one single clip from Bärbel Bass.
So if we are only defined as the welfare party now, that was also a survey, Social Democratic Party. Of course, also against democracy's enemies, so I think we're still needed.
Well, they also define themselves by other things. Total mass surveillance, now with IP address retention, which they absolutely want to push forward. Secondly, as a pro-war party, we absolutely have to become capable of waging war against Russia. So here too, the same saber rattling has come to the forefront, as I'll show you in a moment. After that, they define themselves by simply ruining and destroying this economy. This list is incredibly long. I really have to say that I personally don't need to list all of this. Otherwise, I'd have to talk for 20 minutes before getting to the next clip.
For the first time in Bundeswehr history, we are adopting a military strategy for several reasons. The threat situation has worsened, especially since Putin's war against Ukraine. It goes without saying that we cannot make these scenarios public. Otherwise, we might as well include Vladimir Putin in our email list.
Wait a second, but you did add him. The only one you didn't want to tell about this is the German citizen. Because it's the German citizen who has to put their tax money into this, and the German citizen also has to be satisfied with what they're being made to participate in. That's why the highest level of secrecy is absolutely essential, especially when it comes to how much money is going into this. Let's be honest. But if you believe the media reports, and we have to be honest here, then you've already sent everything to Vladimir Putin, haven't you?
Several members of the Bundestag are currently falling victim to a phishing attack on the Signal messenger service. International intelligence agencies believe that Russia is behind it.
Okay, admittedly, they only believe it. I mean, hey, for people who really want to surf the internet securely and maybe want to take a look around the deep web to see if this data has shown up somewhere. I recommend a computer that can be taken apart as quickly as possible, where you can destroy the data as fast as possible. Then use operating systems like Tails, for example, and I'm telling you, those chats that popped up, you might actually see them. But you might find them because hackers might offer them for sale over the Tor network, but that would definitely go too far here. That's why I personally wonder, what interest does Vladimir Putin actually have in selling this data publicly on the internet? But what? Who am I to just blurt something like this out? But like I said, my little bird told me, take a look here and there. And well, of course I didn't look at them. Why not? I just definitely didn't want to spend money on that in bitcoins, and I didn't know if I would actually get the data. So that's a whole other thing. So Vladimir Putin might be to blame. But you don't really want to give out the data either.
Yeah, SignalJet, that... Yes, soll infiltriert worden sein.
But that's just what people believe. Nothing was found. And that's exactly why there are now several restrictions here for ordinary citizens. By the way, I really don't see any intention here to take action against children's movies. I mean the ones with children in them. Because otherwise, they would bring out completely different measures and of course impose much harsher penalties, for example, on politicians from the left or the SPD who have watched these children's cuddle movies. But the average citizen now has to be subjected to total surveillance because of this matter.
Yes, it's actually a really big topic of controversy. Saying it's been going on for years would be an understatement because people have been debating it for 2 decades now. And it's really true, this is a law that could only ever pass with the support of the CDU and SPD.
Yes, there's nothing against you. You're just on the internet and you either want to use the age verification app or you don't. And now they want to store your IP addresses for 3 months. Of course, there are those really great business models from people who still haven't figured it out and end up tying themselves down with some kind of monthly subscriptions. No, instead they still download pirated movies, which by the way actually benefits the taxpayer. All those lawyer accounts and all those taxes that come in because of it. In any case, now the EU wants all of this. No, actually only the Germans want it, not the EU. They now want to store the IP addresses from each and every one of you, and they want to look very closely at what you do on the internet for the protection of democracy. No, for the protection of children, of course, here in Germany. Not for the protection of democracy, like to undermine members of parliament or anything like that. Educational. But, and we have to say this now, after what we saw yesterday, the SPD is just tumbling downhill in North Rhine-Westphalia, not uphill anymore. And in Lower Saxony, they were able to stay constant, but the CDU is losing there just like in North Rhine-Westphalia. Now we have to keep an eye on you. Just imagine, for example, if you were to watch pro-AfD channels. You need to know that, so maybe soon the police can be set on you. But a few, I'll say, other parties here in Germany see things a bit differently.
You could sum it up like this. All the other parties are strictly against it. So they were also against this bill about mass surveillance, saying that it might not even be constitutionally permissible because...
Feel free to write in the comments if you feel deceived again. I certainly do. So it's apparently fine if this government just lets the special debts they've taken on roll into the regular budget. But it's not okay if they store citizens' IP addresses to create total mass surveillance here in Germany. That's exactly how I see it, yes. So apparently the Greens and the left just don't care at all if they throw the money away, because they've made it very clear that they won't team up with the AfD to keep this government in check when it comes to money. Now they're telling us about the IP addresses again. The Greens and the left will definitely be the enemy when it comes to mass surveillance here in Germany. But when it comes down to it, the Constitutional Court has to be involved. Well, then these parties will probably back down again and say, no, we don't want to work with the AfD. And maybe someday we'll even get into government, then maybe we can just use special debt for ourselves too. And on the other hand, yeah, it's actually pretty clever to just totally monitor people, don't you think? That's why, of course, we won't file a constitutional complaint no matter what they tell you today. Because if someone lies once, you don't believe them, even if they're telling the truth. However, now it's happening with the AfD, which has already said several times that it wants to take legal action against this government, but can't get a majority. They've now come up with a move to see if it can still work out.
States and the European Parliament are discussing how the party can prepare for possibly entering government and how the so-called firewall could be overcome. For this, a former state secretary of the FPO from Vienna is also coming.
Someone has to explain this to me now, please. Yesterday I read a report in Welt, I read the same one in Bild Zeitung, I read the same one in FAZ and in Spiegel. The AfD is completely isolated in Europe, since no other party wants to work with them. The AfD is now so far to the right that it's on the far right fringe of the EU. I think that was the context from Spiegel. I have a question about this. Why is that FPO politician coming up next? And what's actually going on with those Sweden Democrats who are also in the European Parliament? I thought they were too far right for the AfD. That's why the AfD members don't want to join them. Please just explain that to me below, because the Sweden Democrats actually said that the AfD is more like a left-wing bunch. Let's just leave that out. But now they've come up with a really clever move and are simply inviting the unpopular FPO politicians. And the question is, why are they actually coming? And here we'll probably hear something in the next few days about what you would actually need to do to bring down the firewall. I just told you, poll disaster in North Rhine-Westphalia and also in Lower Saxony. In both, and I really mean both states, they're on the verge of having to govern with three parties in the future if they keep going like this. They've lost so much by now, because people have lost so much trust that they're no longer willing to give the current governments any more trust. That's really how it is. And they have to prepare for a three-party coalition just to get a majority in the state parliament at all. That means the coalition talks will then be expanded to 3 parties in both state parliaments. That means Greens, SPD, I almost said left party, but there's not much difference, and of course the CDU, if these reforms could really happen now. Although, and we have to say this as well, the leap to a single-party government, as is the case in Saxony-Anhalt, is now possible. If they continue to gain in the polls, the AfD, then they could probably govern alone in other states too.
That is included. The next big dispute of the day is already beginning to emerge. By the way, this is about health because the Union Parliamentary Group is now announcing that they will not agree to Nina Warken's plans. If this continues, welfare recipients will be funded only through contributions from people on statutory health insurance.
Yes, but you're not the welfare party, correct? Well, I mean, hey, let's be honest. If welfare recipients weren't supported by the contributors, then we wouldn't need all the rest of it. That means, yes, I really have to say it like this, all these other cuts would be absolutely pointless because, for example, family co-insurance could stay, which, by the way, brings in much less money. But anyway, just as a side note. And now I'm wondering, well, how is it really going to turn out today? How are they going to let themselves be blackmailed again today with the key? I don't have one here now, so you'll have to do without your official cause, dear CDU members. And if you keep going along with this, well, then you'll drop so far in the polls that you'll only be able to afford CDU, SPD, Green coalition governments, and I think at the latest then. This country is completely finished, really, because there's only one party that's still growing, and that's the AfD. Why? Well, because they don't lie to people. At least they openly say what we can expect. By the way, the law will only be scrutinized on the 29th. April is when it will really be scrutinized. However, today things are already happening, with CDU and SPD members saying that no common ground can be found here, that maybe it should be sent back to the committees for further work, and so they continue working. However, and I personally don't like this, we will definitely have to provide a bit more money for Ukraine soon. Orban has lifted the blockade.
Hungary is lifting its blockade of aid to Ukraine. This clears the way for the loan of up to 90 billion euros to Ukraine. This loan is intended to cover the country's financial needs until the end of 2027.
Question, I thought Fico would also have a say in this. Or has everything now been completely settled? I mean, hey, let's be honest. Do you really think they'll actually manage to pull this off by the end of 2027? Well, I'm just asking because of corruption and the golden toilets they bought, like Pablo Escobar. Are you really, are you 100% sure that this would actually lead to the whole thing really being financed by the end of 2027? I mean, hey, Russia has already announced, even though Katarina Reike denied it, that there will be no more oil for Germany for PCK Schwed. So, why not? Well, the Russians are now saying, we'll just stop the whole thing. In response, of course, the EU has now launched a new sanctions package. The 14th, 15th, 16th, 17th, 18th, 25th. I can't even keep count anymore. And that achieves just as much as before. So the only question left is, hey, if China were to attack Taiwan now, then we'd basically have a global meltdown, and at the latest, that would really be the end of the EU here. Because it's already bankrupt, we can see that now, can't we?